Hello, my name is Christopher Michael. I work for the Sacramento Fire Department, and I'm going to give a presentation today on Unit 3, the Fire Prevention and Code Enforcement class. First, I'm going to hit on basic concepts and education of enforcement and engineering. So, when it comes to Sacramento County in particular, I think the biggest thing when it comes to research and development is making sure you as a fire official know the codes and why they're in place so you can communicate that properly with the citizens who you're helping to serve in residence and in commercial buildings. Also, there is a way of going about enforcing rules and regulations. Obviously, knowing the rules and regulations are first and foremost, knowing how to inspect and knowing the safety requirements. But you can have a strong relationship with the person who you're trying to enforce these codes with, so you're more productive when it does come to that. And then engineering, there's always innovations, not only in the fire suppression systems in the buildings itself and panels and pumps. And so just knowing that you're on top of that and you're able to kind of work through that if push comes to shove. Like, for example, I just got a tour of the Golden One Center here in Sacramento, California, and talk about engineering and innovation. The pump panels were all digital. They're broken up into the zones. And so when I got that tour, the fire prevention officer said, yeah, we haven't had a drill on this and since it's been built, really. And so if there was an event, no one really knows access points or really how the alarm panel is set up unless they're regulars at the station. But usually with the fire department, it's kind of been a pretty dynamic staffing system. So you always have overtime captains and stuff. So, as an officer, you're kind of one of the first lines of defense when it comes to that. As I said, I work in Sacramento County. Codes enforcement is investigates violations of housing and zoning in residential structures and commercial structures, and also vehicle abandonment. It's authorized by the fire chief and fire code official. And then the county works to achieve compliance first through public relations and being able to communicate with the person. But if that doesn't work, then a person or business, but if that doesn't work, then you move to starting to board up structures, removing junk or junk vehicles, civil citations, and criminal citations. And then it could lead up to demolishing the building. In Sacramento County, there's two processes. There's a planning process and an inspection process. The planning process includes a plan review. So going to the building, or they will turn in a plan, and then as an officer, being able to check that plan and making sure it's compliant with codes. And then there's electronic plan check. Again, we have a system that we could run that through to check that plan. And then also going over electronics that you have in the building. Fire alarms, fire suppression system, and then you have plan preparations, making sure that you have all the resources available to you to implement these fire codes when it comes to planning. And then part of that plan review comes with timelines. There's certain times where these codes need to be enforced, and at certain points throughout the project, these codes needs to be implemented. And then updating the county on the project status, making sure that the codes are up to date and that you're working on upgrading your business if it's required to upgrade for some codes. And then the inspection process, the first thing that the business should do or resident should do is schedule an inspection. And so you call on the phone, and one of the problems when I was talking to the fire officer here in Sacramento is the fact that staffing has been so low lately that they're having trouble being able to keep up with all these plans that are being scheduled. But once you schedule an inspection, The business then needs to schedule or pay a fee for that to be inspected, for the business to be inspected. And then the inspector comes in, a fire prevention officers, they look around and then they inform the business of what needs to be changed. And then the final thing is a SMUD and PG&E electrical and gas check. SMUD and PG&E runs both our electrical and gas systems here in Sacramento County. The next is identifying local organizations that determine fire resistance building. One big one here is UL Solutions. UL Solutions partner with building products and system manufacturers to test and certify that products meet code, standard customer requirements. UL helps building materials gain compliance and performance credentials. So that's one. The next one is Intertech. Intertech has a state-of-the-art facilities, leading technologies, experience that provides testing, inspection, and certification services to customers. The next thing I'm going to cover is tests used. Identify the types of tests used to determine fire ratings of certain building components and materials in your area. So one of the tests is large, mid, and small scale furnaces. So looking at these furnaces, which are one of the leading causes of fire, looking at the size and looking at the code that goes with it. Floor and ceiling systems with horizontal furnaces called Steiner tunnels. And so because the furnace is such a problem when it comes to fire and fire safety, if you have a horizontal system, that could spread fire side to side. And then also we have vertical furnaces for wall systems and expansion joints. Obviously, that causes the fire to go up and down. And then direct flames impingement for industrial performance torches. And so they use the torches to test that material. The next I'm going to do is describe how fire tests and fire ratings apply to inspections and code enforcements in our area. So the biggest thing it does is it reduces risk of hazards. The next, it provides improved fire safe structures. It also reduces fire exposure when a fire comes. It minimizes fire death and injuries, which is the biggest part when you're looking at why we're doing this in general. It reduces injury to firefighters when the fire occurs. So knowing a fire load and being able to reduce risks when it comes to first responders, not only through interest and egress, but only, when it comes to the business itself, we're going to do everything we need to do to put the fire out. And the more you comply with these codes, the more easy you make it for us to do our job. And then, of course, it minimizes fire insurance costs. The less fire you have, the less insurance is going to make you pay for it. You're not going to lose as much of your property. And then it makes code enforcement easier. So the next I'm going to talk about a couple of target hazards here in California or in Sacramento. When we talk about target hazards, it's mostly unsafe structures. One of the biggest ones we have here in Sacramento is homeless encampments. There are many instances where an encampment could have a full-blown, cooking set in a tent that's not regulated whatsoever. And so we respond to many, many, many of these fires during the summer and then also during the winter too. In downtown Sacramento, there is a historical law where there were buildings over 100 years old. It's almost illegal and impossible to upgrade and renovate these buildings, which leads to many, many of these historical homes that haven't been worked on in years and years and years. And so Obviously, as you could tell, that could be a big risk because codes have very well changed in these last 100 years. Another one is vacant warehouse buildings. That comes along with the homeless problem because homeless people are looking for places to live, and they need those buildings sometimes. And so the next I'm going to talk about is explaining plans, review, and structural control as means for fire protection would improve the safety of unsafe structures in your area. So reviewing plans and maintaining structural control before and during construction allows for no mistakes and proper building commerce. Without a qualified watchful eye to maintain proper code, builders and investors may cut corners, potentially endangering the public safety of personnel in these emergencies. So like I said before, making sure that you have these codes in place while you're doing this building is very important. Or the codes in place as best as you can. The next I'm going to do is identify the building construction types in my area that makes it pretty unique and also very hazardous. When you talk about some of these structures, you talk about old Victorian houses where they have balloon frame construction. And so if you have some of these furnaces that aren't under code, you cause a fire in the basement, it stretches to the attic and all the way in between. And so that leads for a very big risk. The next is, again, the homeless problem. A lot of these Victorians could be boarded up too, so that's like a double risk when you talk about the building construction and the homeless, because they're not to code. And then a lot of it, the upkeep isn't very good. So there's a lot of exposed material, dry wood, dry rot, faulty electrical, and so all those put together create a very big fire risk here in Sacramento. And so that will do it for my presentation today. I hope you enjoyed. I know it's a little over 5 minutes, but again, my name is Christopher Michael, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.